everyone, and welcome back to another video.
Everywhere I go, I'm plant-based dripping.
So I asked you guys on Instagram to send me your questions. So the first question is, how do I eat now versus how I ate in recovery? So the similarities are that in recovery, I honored both my mental and physical hunger, and I still do that to this day. I also ate a plant-based diet in recovery, and I still do to this day. I would say that the biggest difference is that my body does not ask for nearly as much food as it did when I was in recovery. Even the first few years of recovery, I was still eating a ton of food. If I tried to intuitively eat when I was in recovery, or I tried to just eat until I was full, that was still restriction to me because my mind was still screaming at me for more food. So in recovery, my mental hunger was very, very strong, and I always made sure to honor my full mental hunger. So the difference is that now my mental hunger is not nearly as strong as it used to be, so I find myself just naturally eating less. In recovery, I found myself super focused on food, and I was quite obsessed with food. But naturally over time, as I fully allowed myself to be obsessed with food, as I allowed myself to eat a ton of food, my interest in food naturally lessened over time, and my appetite lessened over time as well. And I found this to be quite normal because when you're coming out of semi-starvation, it's normal for your body to be obsessed with food and need to eat a lot of food because you're recovering from starvation. So for your own survival, your body is going to naturally make you think of food all the time. It's going to make you want to eat a lot of food all the time, and it needs to eat a lot of food all the time. But as my body healed and as I got out of a caloric deficit, my body and mind realized that starvation was no longer a threat to our survival, and so I naturally became less hyper-focused on food over time. I never ever thought that I could be that person that was able to just eat until they're fully satisfied without being super stuffed and without thinking about my next meal, or without wanting to constantly take photos of my food or plan my meals or just think about food. But now food is like the least interesting thing to me. So the biggest difference is that I now no longer have the desire to eat past the point of satiation. But it was critical for me to go through that period of honoring both my mental and physical hunger in order to get to the place where I am today. The next question is there anything you regret doing in recovery? I'm overall super happy with the road that I took to recovery. Some would say that my road to recovery was quite controversial, but honestly, I'm at a place where I feel like I'm 110% recovered from my eating disorder. I have zero thoughts of relapsing or dieting, and I feel like a lot of conventional roads to recovery lead you to a place where you're almost constantly battling recovery for the rest of your life. Whereas I feel like my road to recovery took me to a place where I feel like I'm 110% healed both physically and mentally, and it's not an issue that I'm going to be battling for the rest of my life. But keep in mind that I personally believe that different things work for different people, and that there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to recovery. But right now in the recovery community, it seems like we're treating recovery as this one-size-fits-all approach, and anything else that anybody else offers is disordered eating or an eating disorder, or they believe you're just not truly recovered. But because I was able to find my own road to recovery, I was able to fully recover and just move on with my life. I'm really grateful that I was able to take what resonated with me from different people in order to find what would work for me, because what one person is doing is not going to work for you if you follow what they're doing 100%. You have to expose yourself to many different resources and take what resonates with you and discard the rest. That is essentially the philosophy that I took when I was in recovery. I realized that if I were to follow one person's advice 100%, I was not going to fully recover. So I had to take bits and pieces from different people that I really resonated with and essentially kind of develop my own road to recovery that I knew would lead to a long-term sustainable recovery. The only thing that I would do differently if I were to go back is that I would have more trust in myself and my body. I was constantly doubting myself, I was constantly doubting what my body was doing, but if I just fully committed, 100% honored my hunger, trusted my body, and allowed myself to fully rest, I believe that I would have recovered much sooner. When I was in the first year of my recovery, I had to work at a job that was quite active. which meant that on my days off, I literally just had to lay in bed all day in order to make up for that. And I'm the type of person that loves like a really busy schedule, but I found that in recovery, my body was so sensitive to any excess energy that was spent that I really had to rest a lot to make up for that. So if I just allowed myself to slow down and rest a lot more, I believe that would have helped me to recover faster. So those are the things that I would have done differently if I were to go back and go through recovery again. But overall, I'm super happy with my road to recovery, and I'm really grateful that I chose recovery. The next question is, what do you think of High Carb Hannah's Eat Your Veggies challenge? I don't think that it would be appropriate for someone that is recovering from a restrictive eating disorder, and I think you have to be super careful to not take it too far, because I essentially used to abuse veggies in that I would use them to fill up my stomach so that I wouldn't overeat. I think it's only beneficial for someone that doesn't eat a lot of vegetables, and maybe if they were to include more vegetables, they would have a lot more energy and feel a lot better. So I think for some people it could be very beneficial, whereas for others it could be harmful. So as long as you're not taking it to the extreme, and as long as it makes you feel better and gives you more energy, then there's probably no harm in doing it. Whereas if you find that as you do it you lose energy, you become obsessed with food, you start binge eating, you definitely should not be doing this challenge. The next question is, do you go to the gym? No, I do not go to the gym. I haven't had a gym schedule in probably over 5 years. I personally just enjoy moving in my everyday life. So for example, instead of taking the bus or driving to work, I like to bike to work. Or instead of driving to an appointment that's nearby, I like to just walk there. I find that it can be much more efficient and productive to just move in your everyday life rather than trying to make time to drive to the gym and run on the treadmill for an hour. Instead, you could be just cleaning the house, or you could be biking to work, or you could be walking to go do errands. And I personally just don't really enjoy the gym environment. I much rather be outside walking or biking or doing productive things around the house. But that's just my personal preference and what works with my lifestyle. The next question is books that we can read about a plant-based diet. So the top 3 books that I can think of are How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger, The China Study by T. Colin Campbell, and Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. The next question is, what are some great food replacements for when you can't afford certain items? So some of the cheapest foods in the grocery store include foods such as rice, beans, oats, potatoes, bananas, apples, frozen vegetables, pasta, and bread. So those can make some great staple foods where you can get the bulk of your calories from. And so by buying a lot of those type of foods, that can definitely help you to save money on your grocery bill. If you try to get a bunch of bougie, expensive products, like buying fresh pressed juices or buying different like mock meats or dairy-free ice creams or all these sort of like specialty products, that can definitely increase your grocery bill a lot. And a lot of the foods that I mentioned you can buy in bulk, which is also going to save you a lot of money as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick health-related Q&A video. In the next video, I'm going to be answering some more personal questions, so stay tuned for that. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. Don't forget to be kind to yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
I never lost sight, and that's the main difference. Now the stock going up, campaign hitting up. Everywhere I go, I'm plant-based, dripping.